Alright guys, in today's video we have some pretty significant PlayStation 5 information to go over and talk about. Now I do want to let you know that this is currently just a rumor and you have to take it with a grain of salt, and I know that a lot of you don't like to hear that, especially because the beginning of this year was nothing but leaks and rumors, but obviously they're going to continue. But I definitely wanted to take time to highlight this one because it is interesting. Even if this does turn out to be completely wrong and false, it does bring up an interesting question here. And it has to do with the PlayStation 5 price, release date, and pre-order information, and how, according to this source, they're claiming that this information is going to be revealed on July 13th, and if that date does move, it's actually going to be revealed before that. Now, obviously, this is interesting for many reasons, but the big question mark about this has to do with the idea of Sony coming out just a few weeks before Microsoft has their big Xbox event and revealing the price tag. In my opinion, there's only one reason Sony would be willing to do that, and we've been talking about this recently, and we're going to get into it. So I find this incredibly interesting, and I know you guys will as well, but I have to emphasize we have to take it with a grain of salt. But I still want to keep you guys in the loop with this stuff. So if you could do me a big favor, make sure you hit the like button to help the video out and show your support. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future content, and hit the bell notification icon as well so you're notified as soon as a new video goes live. But it says here that there could be a very big day coming soon for PS5 fans, according to a source on Twitter. It is alleged that Sony will reveal the price, release date, and pre-order information for the next-gen console all on the same day in July. The PlayStation 5 is currently scheduled to launch in holiday of 2020. PS5 fans should mark July 13th on their calendars right now, as apparently that's the date when Sony will finally give out some of the most important details about its next generation console. This is according to Roberto Serrano, who has offered up interesting information about the PS5 in the past. The price, release date, and pre-orders for the console will be unveiled that Monday coming up soon. When asked who provided such important details, such as the PS5 price, release date, and pre-order info to him, Serrano offered up this response: "I've got my sources inside the entertainment industry. Regardless of that claim, a healthy dose of skepticism should be held in reserve here." The same source also says that if the July 13th reveal is changed for some reason, then Sony will actually dish up all of the PS5 details before that date and not after. As for the format of the supposed July 13th PS5 reveal, it seems that there is no specific event planned, which means it could take the form of a live stream or even a blog post, which is not uncommon. We've seen Sony do this before. It's a very exciting rumor, as Microsoft has not revealed the price of the next generation Xbox yet, and it must be questioned whether Sony is willing to reveal that key information before its rival does. But if the PS5 pre-orders go live that day, it seems almost certain that millions of fans will ensure the success of Sony's next-gen console, regardless of the price. And so, yeah, I can confirm that. I don't care how much this console is, I'm going to be pre-ordering one, and I'm certainly going to be paying very close attention to July 13th. But I know that this is a lot of info, and this is a very loaded claim, and I totally understand that if you hear this, you're just like, no, it's BS, it's somebody making something up. But the reason why I'm willing to talk about this, considering I know most of you probably haven't heard of this source, Roberto Serrano, the reason why I'm actually deciding to talk about this is because I do recall this individual a day or two before anybody else was talking about the date for the PlayStation 5 event. He actually called it. He said that it was going to be on June 11th. I think that was the date. And I noticed that he had put this information out here on Twitter, and nobody really paid attention to it because it just came off as just another random person saying random things and making stuff up. But he was actually correct, and he was, as far as I could tell, the first person to publicly put it out there that this is when the event is coming. This was before the advertising leaked. This was before everybody else started talking about it. And so that tells me that this individual does, in fact, have some type of source or contacts that do know this information, and this is a very specific date. It just doesn't seem likely that an individual who was correct in the past would just, put a random date out there saying this is when this info is going to go live. Now, the big question here is this, is if we do believe this source, does it make sense for Sony to do this? Now, instinctively, you're going to say, no, of course it doesn't make sense. Both Sony and Microsoft have made it clear that they're playing a big game of chicken here. Who's going to go first? who's going to be the first one to blink when it comes to pricing details. And to me, there is one reason and one reason only why Sony would decide to actually put this information out here, because you have to understand that it's in Sony's best interest as well as Microsoft's to not push this info off any further. It seems likely that Microsoft is going to wait till the end of July to put this information out there, but we have to understand that these companies need to get pre-order numbers in so they can evaluate how much they're going to need at launch, and they can meet that demand, or at least get as close to meeting that demand as they can. Right now, they're kind of blind. They need that info. And also for the fans, people like us, people who want to know how much is this console going to be, because for a lot of people, that's a make or break piece of information. So anyway, the reason why I think this could be real and we could actually get this info before Microsoft puts it out is because Sony decided that they are going to sell the digital edition of the PlayStation 5 at $400. That, in my opinion, is the only reason why Sony would feel confident and comfortable enough to just say a couple weeks before Microsoft is undoubtedly going to give the price for their next generation Xbox console. This is the only reason why they would feel confident enough to do that, is because we know that the Xbox Series X coming in at $400 is extremely unlikely, but not out of the realm of possibility. Microsoft wants to, eat that cost. They could, but if they did that, Sony would still be covered, and they would be able to match that price with their digital-only console or their digital edition. So they wouldn't have to worry about that. But when it comes to the Xbox Series S model, or the Lockhart model, which has been heavily rumored and is clearly a real thing that it might not be announced at this July event, but it's going to be announced the month after that. It seems that Sony would most likely, and this is just speculation on my part, but let's be real here, there's a good chance, it's almost guaranteed, that Sony has this information. Sony knows what's going on in Microsoft. These are just things that Sony would find a way to figure out. It's too important, it's too imperative. And if they, discovered that, okay, the Xbox Series S, we have this information, right? So surely Sony has it. If the Xbox Series S model is a real thing, and it is, the specs are leaking out, and it is significantly less powerful GPU-wise than the Series X as well as the PS5, then there's nothing Sony can do about that. If Microsoft's going to sell that console at $300 or $350, there's no way Sony would be able to undercut that unless they had a less powerful console themselves, and they don't. The difference between the digital version of the console and the regular disc version is simply that. There's no disc drive. And so we've talked about before, would it make sense for Sony to sell the digital version of the PlayStation 5 at $50 less at $450? The more I think about it, the more I realize that doesn't really make much sense, because most people are not going to see the value in that. Yeah, $50 saved is $50 saved, but if you think about the purpose of this, other than the fact that Sony would be able to just simply make more profit off of a digital console, it makes more sense, and it just seems more in line with the way Sony has been in the past console generation with the PS4. It just makes more sense to me that they're going to eat the cost up front with this digital console, and they're going to ensure that over time, over the next year or two, or maybe a couple years, 3 or 4, they're going to recoup that loss through digital sales. Because you have to understand, and this is very important for people to understand, that whoever buys the digital-only PS5, and if it's at $400, I think it's safe to say that that's the console SKU that will sell the most, they are locked into digital-only purchases. And what that means for Sony is more profit. That means every single game that's purchased on this console is going to rake in more money for them, more revenue, and that will eventually become profitable. If 100 people buy this digital console and 80 of these people buy 10 or more games, then that is profitable for Sony, and they can certainly sell this console at $400 no problem by doing that. So this is why I find this information so interesting, and I think that it seems somewhat likely maybe that this is something Sony wants to do. Some people are thinking, wait, wouldn't Sony want to have a dedicated event for this information? Not necessarily. We know that in August, Sony is apparently planning on having a state of play, which, based off of everything we heard about this state of play, it's going to be the biggest one maybe we've ever had. It could be maybe like 45 minutes long or something like that. I could be wrong. That's just pure speculation on my part, but it sounds like they're going to have a lot of new games to show off. Silent Hill is going to be there and a bunch of other stuff. So people would naturally expect this information to be there, which it could. But Roberto here is saying that if this event, or if this date, I should say, moves, we're actually going to learn about this information before that. This makes sense because if Sony just decided, you know what, we're doing it. $500 disc version, $400 digital only version. We're good, we're confident, and we're going to come in at that $400 price point with one version of the PlayStation 5. And at that point, there's no reason for Sony to worry anymore or wait to see what Microsoft is going to do. Because again, if they come in at $400 with the Series X, they don't have to worry about that. When it comes to the Series S model, I think at that point, Sony just realized that there's nothing they can do about it. They decided not to create a less powerful console to sell at $300, and it is what it is. This would also be a good PR move because it would be a good surge for Sony, right? Like, it would get people talking at a time when people should be talking about Xbox. If they do it on July 13th, you know, a couple weeks before, it would make a lot of sense in my opinion, because at that point you're going to get people excited, people are going to be pumped, people are going to be out there pre-ordering. You know, Sony can maybe brag about their pre-order numbers if they want to, and I'm telling you, if Sony decided that they're going to sell the digital edition of this console at $400 at $399, then yes, if they made that executive decision and they're going to eat that cost and they crunch the numbers, then you better believe they are going to come out here and reveal this information as soon as they can. They're not going to wait anymore, because at that point they have nothing to worry about. This console will sell like hotcakes if it comes in, even the digital edition. Because I guarantee you there's a lot of people, and I know I'm going on and on here, I'm going to end the video, but there's a lot of people who maybe would have normally considered a disc-based version of this console, but when they hear that there's a $100 price difference, at that point they might just be like, I'm going with the digital version. And again, that's a good thing for Sony in the long run. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. We do have other PlayStation 5 news and info to go over. We'll talk about that in tomorrow's video. Seems that Sony is trying to acquire some studios apparently, which is very exciting, but I had to make sure to talk about this first, and I had a lot to say about it. So let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it or found it informative. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.